was this the moment everything quietly went wrong? Let's begin as the road was empty. That's why Logan Reed came. No traffic, no witnesses. Just speed, control, and the sound of his own engine. He was pushing his limits when something ahead made him slow down. A dog, standing alone on the side of the road. Not a stray, a police dog. No vehicle nearby, no handler in sight. Logan stopped. He looked around. Nothing made sense. He waited for a moment, then decided to leave. But the dog didn't bark. He didn't chase. He climbed onto the bike and stayed perfectly still. Minutes later, as Logan picked up speed again, the dog suddenly tensed and pressed a paw against his shoulder. Logan slowed, just in time to see a deer cross the road inches ahead of him.
Oh,
It saved
oh my
his
God.
life. Or maybe it only delayed something worse. Was the dog protecting him? The mission was supposed to be routine. The police dog, Echo, had done this dozens of times before. Moving through darkness, following commands, trusting the rhythm he had learned through years of training. He knew the sounds of night operations. The boots, the radios, the quiet urgency in human voices. Then something changed. A sharp scent, unfamiliar, heavy. Before Echo could react, his body gave in. The ground rose too quickly, and the world faded without warning. There was no pain, just darkness. When Echo woke up, he was alone. The first thing he noticed was the cold air. The second was silence. Not the controlled silence of a mission, but the empty kind. The kind that meant no one was nearby. He tried to stand. His legs trembled, slow to respond, but they held. Echo looked around. There were no buildings, no lights, no people. Only a long, empty road stretching in both directions, surrounded by open land and low hills. Dry ground, sparse brush, nothing that suggested safety or purpose. This was not a place dogs were brought. Echo lowered his head and breathed in carefully. The scents told the same story. No recent human activity, no traffic, no familiar markers. He had been placed here, left behind. Training told Echo to move, to search, to return to his handler. But another instinct, just as strong, told him to stay where he was. So Echo stood still at the edge of the road and waited. The biker came to that place for a reason. Logan Reed knew the road well. It was long and empty, far from town, far from attention. He had tested his limits here many times. The curves were wide, the pavement clean. No cars, no patrols. It was where Logan came to ride without being watched. He was already pushing speed when his headlight caught something ahead. Logan slowed. A figure stood near the road. At first, he thought it was debris. Then the shape shifted slightly, and he realized it was a dog. He rolled to a stop several yards away, engine humming softly. A dog out here made no sense. As his headlight settled, details became clear. The stance, the posture, the way the animal watched him without fear or hesitation. This wasn't a stray. Then Logan saw the collar, not a regular collar. Thick, purpose-built, worn by use. A police dog. Logan frowned. He scanned the area. No parked vehicles, no flashing lights, no signs of trouble. Nothing. Why would a police dog be left here, of all places? Logan said quietly. There was no answer. Logan had no reason to stay, and plenty of reasons to leave. His past with law enforcement wasn't something he talked about, but it had shaped his habits. He avoided attention, avoided questions, avoided anything that could pull him back into systems he no longer trusted. This dog was exactly that kind of trouble. Logan reached for the ignition, ready to ride away. But Echo didn't move. He didn't bark, didn't approach, didn't run. He simply stood there, calm and alert, watching Logan as if waiting for something to happen. That gave Logan pause. Stray dogs followed people. They begged. They panicked. They reacted. Echo did none of those things. Logan took off his helmet and rested it on the seat. He studied Echo more carefully now. The animal showed signs of recent work. Clean coat, controlled breathing. No signs of neglect or confusion. The thought settled in Logan's mind, heavy and uncomfortable. He looked down the road again, empty as far as he could see. If he left now, Echo would still be standing there when the sun came up, or he wouldn't. Either way, it didn't feel right. Logan exhaled slowly. "I don't want any trouble," he said, mostly to himself. Echo remained still. Logan stepped closer. Echo's eyes followed him, focused but not aggressive. There was no challenge in his posture. No fear either. Just awareness. Logan stopped a few feet away, close enough to see the wear on the collar, the marks where equipment had once been attached. Echo had been active recently, and now he was here, alone. Logan straightened up. "Just for now," he said quietly. "That's it. Temporary." That was the deal Logan made with himself. He turned back toward the bike. Echo moved first, not suddenly, not nervously. He walked forward, stopped near the bike, and sat down, waiting. Logan stared at him. That simple action did something Logan hadn't expected. It didn't ask. It didn't demand. It trusted. Logan shook his head once, a short, resigned motion. "All right," he said. "You can ride with me. For now." He started the engine. The road remained empty. The night stayed quiet. Logan Reed rode through the early hours without a destination. The road stretched ahead, quiet and familiar. But the weight behind him was new. Echo sat steady on the modified rear seat, body aligned with the motion of the bike, neither tense nor relaxed, just balanced. Wind passed over his fur, but his attention never drifted. His eyes followed the road, the edges, the spaces most people ignored. Logan noticed that. Most dogs shifted. Most animals reacted to speed with excitement or fear. Echo did neither. He moved only when necessary, adjusting his posture in response to turns before Logan even leaned into them. This wasn't coincidence. Logan didn't speak. He focused on riding, letting the engine carry them forward. He told himself this was temporary. A short ride. A quick solution. Still, he didn't take the direct road toward town. The first warning came on a narrow stretch, bordered by dry brush and loose gravel. Echo stiffened. It wasn't dramatic. No sudden movement. Just a subtle tightening through his shoulders, his head angling slightly toward the darkness to the right. Logan felt it through the seat. Years on a bike had trained him to trust small signals, a change in balance, a hesitation where there shouldn't be one. He eased off the throttle. A second later, something burst from the brush. A deer crossed the road at full speed, so close Logan felt the rush of air as it passed. Had he been riding faster, the impact would have thrown both of them into the ditch. The deer disappeared into the dark. Logan slowed to a stop further down the road, heart pounding. Echo had already relaxed, posture returning to neutral, as if nothing had happened. Logan looked back at him. "You saw that before I did," Logan said quietly. Echo did not respond. He didn't need to. Logan started riding again, more alert now. The road felt different, less predictable. The second moment came closer to dawn. Fog settled low over the pavement, thin but deceptive. Logan approached a long curve he had taken countless times before. Normally, he would lean in and power through. Echo moved again. This time, He shifted his weight backward, planting himself more firmly than before. Logan adjusted instinctively, slowing instead of accelerating. The front tire hit a patch of damp gravel mid-turn. The bike slipped slightly, just enough to remind Logan how easily control could be lost. But because he had slowed, it held. They passed through safely. Logan didn't stop. He didn't have to. He knew exactly what Echo had prevented. By the time the sun rose, Logan had stopped thinking of Echo as a problem. He stopped at a small roadside overlook, killed the engine, and sat on the curb. Echo stepped down smoothly and stood beside him, scanning the surroundings with quiet focus. Logan watched him for a long moment. Echo wasn't looking for commands. He wasn't waiting for approval. He was aware of everything. Sounds, movement, distance. This dog wasn't just trained. He was disciplined. Logan thought about how many decisions Echo had made without making them obvious. How many times he had warned without forcing action. "You're not just along for the ride," Logan said under his breath. Echo remained still. The realization settled slowly. Echo wasn't reacting to danger. He was anticipating it. They stopped once more, briefly, at a remote gas station. Logan filled the tank while Echo waited beside the bike, sitting exactly where he had been left. People noticed. A trucker glanced over twice. The clerk paused mid-motion behind the counter. Echo didn't move. No leash, no command, just control. Logan felt the eyes on them and finished quickly. He didn't like attention. Not anymore. They left before anyone asked questions. As the morning went on, Logan found himself checking Echo before checking the road. Not because he didn't trust his own instincts, but because Echo's awareness operated on a level he couldn't reach. Echo didn't overreact. He didn't hesitate. He observed. And each time he did, Logan adjusted. Nothing dramatic happened after that. No sirens, no crashes. Just a quiet understanding forming between them. Trust, not emotional, not spoken, earned. By midday, Logan had reached a decision he didn't want to admit. Echo didn't belong on the road with him, and he didn't belong abandoned somewhere else either. Logan leaned against the bike, helmet hanging from one hand, staring at the road that led toward town. The police station sat on the edge of it. The thought tightened his chest. His history with the police wasn't violent or loud. It was a collection of small things, assumptions, judgments, moments where he hadn't been given the benefit of doubt. Enough to teach him distance, enough to teach him caution. But Echo was different. Whatever had happened to put Echo in the middle of nowhere had nothing to do with Logan, and everything to do with responsibility. Logan sighed. "This isn't where you belong," he said quietly. Echo looked at him, just once, then back toward the road. The ride into town was slower. Traffic returned. Sounds multiplied. The distant wail of sirens made Logan's shoulders tense, but Echo remained steady. When the police station finally came into view, Logan stopped across the street. He watched officers come and go. Normal routines. No urgency. No chaos. Nothing suggested a dog had gone missing. Logan shut the engine off and sat there longer than necessary. He didn't want explanations. He didn't want questions. But he also didn't want to walk away. Logan crossed the street and pulled into the lot. The engine died. Echo waited. Logan took a breath, then nodded once. "Let's get this over with." Echo stepped down from the bike smoothly, landing with practiced control. Together, they walked toward the entrance. Logan didn't know what would come next. He didn't know what Echo had been part of, or why someone would leave him where he'd been found. But he knew one thing clearly now. Echo wasn't just a dog who had helped him. Echo was a dog who had been trained to protect, and bringing him back was the only decision that made sense. The police station looked ordinary in the morning light. Cars came and went. Doors opened and closed. Voices overlapped in calm, familiar patterns. There was no sense of urgency when Echo walked through the entrance. An officer noticed him immediately, not with surprise, but recognition. The posture, the collar, the way the dog moved with quiet certainty. Someone made a quick call. Another officer checked a log. Procedures followed procedures. Echo was not treated like a mystery. He was treated like something that belonged. A veterinarian arrived within the hour. Echo was guided into an examination room, his movements steady, cooperative. He followed each instruction precisely, as if the hours away had never happened. Vitals were taken, temperature checked, paws examined, eyes and ears inspected. No visible injuries. The veterinarian noted mild exhaustion, possible dehydration. Nothing alarming, nothing urgent. Echo stood still through it all, breathing even, gaze calm, showed no distress, no confusion, no signs of trauma. On paper, everything looked normal. He was cleared to remain at the station. Logan Reed waited near the entrance. He stood with his helmet tucked under one arm, watching the routine unfold from a distance. No one questioned him closely. No one asked him to stay. His name was written down, a brief account recorded. Then the attention moved on. That surprised him more than suspicion would have. When Echo was led away down the hallway, Logan stayed where he was. He watched until the dog disappeared around a corner. That was enough. Logan turned and walked out. No goodbyes, no hesitation. Outside, he mounted his bike, started the engine, and rode away. Inside the station, the day continued. Echo was returned to his unit. Familiar corridors, familiar scents, familiar sounds. Radios crackling softly, phones ringing in the background. Officers passed by without stopping. Some nodded. Some didn't notice him at all. Which meant everything was as it should be. As evening approached, preparations began for a scheduled meeting. Nothing urgent, nothing reactive. A routine gathering to review procedures, ongoing cases, and upcoming operations. The room filled slowly. Chairs scraped against the floor. Papers were set down. Coffee cups were placed beside notebooks. Echo took his usual place along the wall. He lay down, head resting on his paws, eyes partially open. He listened. Voices blended together in steady rhythm. Calm, professional, familiar. Among them was Officer Robert Hayes. He was Echo's trainer, the one who had worked with him the longest, the one whose voice Echo had learned to follow without hesitation. Hayes stood near the front of the room. His uniform was neat, his posture relaxed. He spoke clearly, without raising his voice. He didn't rush, he didn't linger. Just another officer doing his job. Echo did not react. His breathing remained slow and even. His ears shifted once, then settled. Again. To anyone watching, he looked exactly as expected. A trained dog at rest. The meeting lasted less than an hour. Questions were asked, answers given, notes taken. Nothing out of the ordinary. When it ended, officers gathered their things and left in small groups. Conversations drifted briefly, then faded as people returned to their routines. Echo stayed until his handler motioned. Then he rose and followed, silent and focused. Later that night, the station grew quieter. Lights dimmed in unused offices. Doors were locked. Footsteps became less frequent. Echo was settled into his kennel. He curled slightly, muscles relaxing after a long day. His breathing slowed, His eyes closed, then opened again, alert even in rest. Nothing felt wrong. No alarm sounded. No concerns were raised. To everyone around him, Echo had returned exactly as he had left. Across town, Logan rode familiar streets. The engine hummed beneath him, steady and reliable. Traffic lights changed. Cars passed. The world moved on. He told himself that was the end of it. Echo was back where he belonged. That was enough. Back at the station, the night deepened. Echo shifted slightly in his sleep. His ears twitched once, reacting to distant sounds. Then he settled again. The building was still. Quiet, normal. Everything seemed fine. Echo was taken in for another scan early the next morning. It was meant to be routine. A final check. A precaution after an unexplained absence. No one expected anything new. The machine hummed softly as the image formed on the screen. Then the room changed. A small object appeared clearly in the scan. Metal, foreign, embedded. The veterinarian froze. The image was adjusted, zoomed in, checked again. There was no mistake. A listening device had been implanted beneath Echo's skin. Not medical, not department issued, not accidental. The calm inside the station broke instantly. Phones came out, doors closed, officers gathered in low voices. Someone pulled up logs. Someone else replayed security footage. Then a worse realization settled in. The device wasn't just invasive, it was active, which meant something else. The meeting the night before, the one about the ongoing major case, had not been private. Someone had been listening. The station shifted from concern to alarm. This was no longer about a missing dog. It was about compromised information. Officers moved quickly. Someone went to retrieve Echo from the medical room. The room was empty. At first, no one reacted. They checked the kennel. Empty. They checked the hallway. Nothing. Security cameras were pulled up again. Timestamps reviewed. Echo had been there. Then he wasn't. No forced exit. No alarm triggered. The dog had disappeared. Again. This time, panic followed immediately. Search procedures were discussed. The building buzzed with movement. The station that had looked calm an hour earlier now felt exposed. The timeline narrowed fast. Who had been with Echo before he returned the first time? Who had spent hours alone with him? Who had brought him in and left without staying? Logan Reed, the biker. His name surfaced quickly. His history didn't help. Past conflicts, prior stops, a record that wasn't criminal but wasn't clean either. Logan was brought in. The interview room was plain. Logan sat upright, hands resting on the table, expression steady. He answered every question directly. He said he found Echo alone. He said the dog looked trained. He said he brought him back because it was the right thing to do. He said he didn't touch the dog beyond what was necessary. He said he had no idea about any device. There was nothing to support his story. No witnesses, no footage, no proof. And now Echo was gone again. The suspicion stayed. Logan Reed remained in custody. Echo woke up somewhere unfamiliar. Cold ground, sharp smells, pain along his side. This time, he did not wait. His body ached, and his movement was slow at first, but his mind was clear. He stood. The place meant nothing to him. No familiar scents, no markers, no reason to stay. Echo chose direction. He followed memory instead of instinct. The path was not easy. He crossed rough ground and cut through narrow spaces. His paws scraped against broken pavement. His side brushed against rusted metal. Once, he slipped and fell hard, leaving a shallow streak of blood behind. He got up again. Echo avoided roads when he could. When he couldn't, he waited. He watched traffic. He moved only when it was safe. Thirst slowed him. Fatigue weighed on his steps. Still, he continued. This time, Echo was not waiting to be found. He was returning. By the time the police station came into view, Echo was limping. His coat was dirty, his breathing heavier. Small cuts marked his legs and shoulder. But his pace did not stop. He crossed the final stretch carefully and reached the perimeter just as daylight began to fade. Inside the station, suspicion still rested on Logan Reed. Outside, Echo stood at the edge of the place he belonged, hurt, exhausted, but certain. The truth had not been carried by words. It had walked back on its own. Echo returned just before night settled in. He was exhausted. His movements were slower now, his breathing heavier. Dirt clung to his coat, and thin lines of dried blood marked his legs and shoulder. Whatever had been placed inside him was still there, unseen, untouched, carried back with him. No one spoke at first. The station doors opened, and Echo stepped inside on his own. He did not rush. He did not hesitate. He moved with the same controlled pace he had always known, even as his body showed the cost of the journey. His return changed everything. Logan Reed was brought out of the holding room and asked to wait in the hallway. No explanation yet. No apology. Just space. Temporary, uncertain. He stood with his hands at his sides, watching as Echo crossed the familiar floor. When Echo entered the main corridor, something shifted. He stopped. Just for a moment. His nose tightened. His breathing changed. A scent reached him, one that had nothing to do with metal or danger. It was older than that, heavier, the kind that lingered quietly in people who carried something they had never resolved. Echo reacted before understanding why. A brief flash of alarm passed through him. Then he steadied. Slowly, he turned his head. His gaze moved across the officers gathered nearby, then settled, briefly, on Officer Robert Hayes. Hayes stepped forward instinctively. Surprise crossed his face, followed by relief. He reached out, stopping himself short of contact. His dog had come back. In the hallway, Logan watched the reunion. The relief on Hayes' face. The way the dog stood, still, deliberate. Logan said nothing. He exhaled once, quietly. Then Echo looked away. The moment passed. Echo relaxed his posture as if whatever had surged through him had settled back into place. He turned and walked down the corridor, no longer focused on his handler. That night, the station quieted. Lights dimmed, offices emptied. The building returned to its nighttime rhythm, soft, footsteps, distant radios, doors closing one by one. Echo moved through the halls without guidance. He stopped outside an office he knew. Inside, Robert Hayes sat alone at his desk. Echo stepped forward. In his mouth was a badge. He placed it gently against the left side of Hayes' chest. Then he sat down. Hayes did not move. The room stayed silent. Their eyes met and held. No anger, no defense, no words, just understanding. Echo remained still. Hayes' breathing slowed. His gaze fell to the badge, then returned to the dog. Nothing more needed to be said. The next morning, Logan Reed was released. No charges, no statements. He stepped outside and stood across from the station for a long moment, helmet in his hands. The building looked the same as it always had, solid, unmoved. He took one last look, then turned away. The road waited. Logan mounted his bike, started the engine, and rode off without looking back. Inside the station, the badge rested on a desk. Robert Hayes turned in, his resignation before noon. The announcement spread quickly. Confusion followed, Questions rose. Voices filled the halls. Why now? Why him? Only two remained quiet. Echo lay near the doorway, watching. And the chief, standing just far enough away, met Echo's gaze. No explanation passed between them. None was needed. The final image, an open end. In a small house on the other side of the city, sunlight filtered through thin curtains. On one wall hung a framed photograph. Logan Reed, younger, standing beside his motorcycle, holding a trophy from a racing competition. The moment captured pride. Next to it hung a black and white photograph of a man. The name beneath it read, Daniel Hayes, 1968-1996. The man in the photograph had once been an exceptional racer, fast enough to compete at the highest level. But in the biggest race of his career, he did not take first place. That result stayed with him. What should have been acceptance turned into obsession. He trained harder, drove faster, took greater risks. He chased a finish that could never be reclaimed. The pursuit ended in a crash, and the crash ended his life. He left behind a young wife and a son who was too young to understand what had been lost. Daniel Hayes, Robert Hayes.